we leave them on?
applications.
I am turning them on because people forget to use them,
Okay,
Sorry.
all right,
and you can't hear when I'm on the YouTube.
okay. Although nobody seems to have a problem hearing me, I don't know. Was that, okay, we'll wait another 30 seconds. Pieces of paper in order here. Ready? Good. Staff ready? Good. Good evening. Welcome to the Independence City Council meeting. It's Tuesday, November 14th, 2023. It's 6:30 in the evening. Let the record show that councilors are all here, and it's dark outside, okay? Council members, you have the minutes of the October 24th meeting in front of you, and do they meet with your approval?
Move to approve.
Second?
I have a motion second by Martin Willis. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, motion carries. Thank you very much. We're going to go to visitor comments. We'll remind folks that during visitor comments, the people get a chance to speak for 3 minutes, and it's a one-way kind of communication. We're here to listen, and but they're free to share with us what they have to share with us. And so we will be listening. So tonight, we have Laurel Yurkowski. Please come forward. And you live over in Monmouth.
Correct.
Thank you, and welcome to Independence City Council.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me speak. I was shocked last week when I found out that a registered sex offender had the address of the Independence Public Library. And it just doesn't sound right, number one, but I don't think it's a good idea to do that, because it's my understanding that the registered sex offenders can list any public building as their home. And it could be the police station, it could be City Hall, but it's like a sex offender has an address of the elementary school. I don't think there are right now, I haven't investigated yet, but that just doesn't seem right. And to have their address as a public place where children are there every single day or when it's open doesn't make sense. I just think it's a bad idea, and I don't know why it couldn't be another address, because you wouldn't put the offender's name as a school, and I don't think it should be a library. And the individual I'm speaking about, he is a level 3, which is the highest, and in his report it says that it's highly likely that he will offend again. And that's a scary situation, and it just doesn't make sense, and I think it's a bad idea. And plus, when people look up sex offenders on the registry, they see the library as their home, and that's not inviting to other people who want to live here, move here. It just looks bad, and it's just a bad idea. So I would propose that we somehow get the library, public library, off this person's home address. He can have any other building he wants, but the schools and the libraries are for children. And this person, I believe, is a pedophile. So and also he's got numerous felonies. And I don't think it's right to have him. I don't think he's homeless. That's just my opinion. So he's living somewhere, and hopefully it's not the library. The library just got back to me today. I've been trying to contact them. I don't think he's actually living at the library. I don't know. So anyway, my point is, we should move somehow to change the public library's address away from a sex offender's address. And that's my opinion, and I just wanted you all to be aware of it. And thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Appreciate you
Thank
coming
you.
to visit with us. Any other public comments? Okay. We're going to move forward with different reports. And I have my mayor report. And you can stay if you want, whether it's exciting or not, I don't know. So I didn't realize I've been kind of busy in the last couple of weeks until I started writing it down. Now I know why I've been tired. Recently had a chance to meet with the leadership of Chemeketa Community College and a number of other community leaders. We're talking, they're getting back to us after visiting with us last year. So we talked about workforce, business, and the needs of the community and how Chemeketa can be better able to meet the needs of our area. And so their president came over. It was a good conversation. The COG Legislative Committee organized and made sure that it happened a special meeting between COG staff who know about working with cities and Oregon legislative staff, because many of them don't know how cities are put together and what resources are available, and that cities and the Council of Governments are available to answer questions that legislators and or legislative staff have. It's amazing. If they ask us, we can tell them what works and what doesn't work. Sometimes they forget to ask. Also, just for your calendars, in February, the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments annual meeting will take place. I'm on that planning committee, so I'll be doing this. Last week, I had the pleasure of going over to the Monmouth City Hall and presenting a Good Neighbor Award to Marty Wine, their outgoing city manager. And, it's amazing what can happen with cooperation, collaboration, communication, and it has been truly a wonderful working relationship between us and the city of Monmouth, specifically with their city manager. It was wonderful, and she was surprised, and Cease and I worked on that together, and it was truly a pleasure to be able to do that. As many of you may have seen, we had Sweet Home, the city of Sweet Home, and a number of their leaders come and visit us, and Sean and Kenna and myself had a chance to talk with them, and they were interested in how we've done what we've done, and it's really nice when people are able to learn with us. Had a chance last week, was it last week, Sean? To the city staff meeting. Yeah, had a chance to visit with the city leadership team at their retreat. It was really a nice time to get together with all of the staff, and I think I helped fill out part of their bingo card. Had a chance to recently go to the ribbon cutting, so to speak, at the new Monmouth City Hall. It was a nice event. Trying to get everything done, supply chain continued to be a challenge, but it was mentioned by the mayor and a number of their counselors and staff that they appreciated the showing from Independence in being supportive of them and what they're doing. They noticed, and it was made, they really appreciated that we were there. Last year, Mayor Kuntz and I, as part of the Monmouth Independence Chamber of Commerce and as part of supporting them, we offered up a lunch to be auctioned off to a local business, and we paid off on that this week, and it was really a fun time. Last Friday, I had a chance to meet with Congresswoman Salinas when she was here in town, and she's been advocating for us and some local nonprofits in congressional budgets, and she was over at the food bank, and so we had a nice chance to visit. On Saturday, was honored to be able to speak at the Veterans Plaza for our a Veterans Day event. It's always an honor to be able to speak at that kind of an event. And just yesterday, city staff and I had a chance to visit with representatives of the U.S. Department of Transportation, and we talked infrastructure, trolleys, infrastructure, bridges, and roads. And so it was it was a good opportunity, and we let them know what our needs were, and they're working on helping us identify and move forward with funding opportunities. With that, I'm going to go to Chief Mason, who is going to be giving the city manager report, and then also a police department report. So Chief, and I think you, since you have some slides, I think you're welcome to sit there and be able to go from there.
Perfect. I'll apologize to Marilyn now. Marilyn, I'm sorry. I know you can't see me. Everyone else I still have eye contact with. Really, no city manager report today. We'll forego that until our city manager returns.
Thank you.
She's only gone for 1 week. But I do have my staff presentation for you today for the police department. Haven't actually done one of these for quite a long time. I think that when I went back to look at, some data, it was a new counselor presentation that I had. So I think it was, and it wasn't when Kate came on. So it was clear back to when, I think Counselor Joven and Counselor Dawn Roden came on. So it's been quite some time. Anyway, today I have a two-part presentation. We're going to start off with an overview of the department, focusing on personnel and some personnel challenges that we have had, and some good news that we have in that field. And then we're going to go into a little bit of crime stats to share that. I get those questions a lot, and I don't generally focus on those, so this will give us an opportunity to talk about them if there are questions. Next slide, please, Karen. So the department, while we have a lot of neat stuff, we have cars and equipment, and we do a lot of things, but really we are just an organization about people, and if we don't have good people, then really we aren't going to be a good department, even if we have all the best equipment and the best office in the nation, right? And I think we have the best equipment and the best office in Polk County, and I stand by that. And I think our people really help us create a good department with the things that you have provided for us to have and use. So we have a budget of about $2.75 million for personnel, and that budget allows us to employ 18 and a half full-time staff. Well, 18 full-time and 1 half-time staff. That is broken down with 15 and a half that are sworn, 2 support staff, and 1 code enforcement. Next slide, please, Karen. As a department, we have 24-hour patrol coverage, 365 days a year. So whether it's a holiday or a nice summer day or a rainy, stormy day, we have someone on all the time, which is probably the biggest challenge when it comes to the personnel challenges that I'll tell you about later, is keeping that patrol coverage staffed. We provide investigation services, and we're really proud of those services. I feel that we do above and beyond in our investigations, and we're going to talk about that a little further as well. We have a school resource officer program. We have a traffic safety and provide traffic law enforcement in the community. Our department manages the Polk CERT program for the county. We have code enforcement, and we provide security and planning and staffing at city events. Next slide, please. So breaking it down, I put planned staffing there because I'm going to talk about what the budget is built on, right? So the budget is built on 4 administrative positions and 11 and a half sworn officer positions. Breaking that 11 and a half down, it's 7 and a half that are patrol officers on rotating shifts. So our rotating shifts, we have 2 separate day shifts so that they have 7-day-a-week coverage, 2 swings, 2 graves, and then we have 1 mid-shift to provide coverage on the days that we don't have administrative staff around. So generally that's the weekends are really light on the days, so we have that mid-shift come in to assist. It's been a while since we've had that shift, but that is what the budget is built on. We also have 1 part-time certified officer that we employ with the idea that they're going to be doing traffic enforcement, but with the staffing needs that we've had, they've been covering shifts as well and helping out in some of the investigations. We're getting to a point now where we're starting to get that person back out there. You should see, you've probably seen, because I've seen our tickets going up, you've probably seen more stops going up, especially in school zones. We've really been focusing on school zones and some pedestrian safety that we're getting complaints about at Main and Polk have been really his priorities when he comes in and works.
Chief, is this the motorcycle police officer?
It would have been the motorcycle police officer position, but we lost him. He retired boy, it's probably been 18 months ago now. Yeah, but that position has been filled by another sworn officer that just wants to work part-time, so, but not on a motorcycle. Okay, the next slide has already been done. Thank you, Karen. So the remaining 4 police officer positions, because that was 7.5, so to get us to 11.5, we have 1.5 FTE that we dedicate to the schools. That gives us 1 full-time officer at Central High School and a half-time at Talmadge Middle School. And those officers and that contract is paid for by the school district. I can't say it's 100% paid for. It's a cooperative thing, but they do pay a lot of it, right? So they're only getting those officers when school's in session, and we get the advantage of them during the summer. So we make sure that that contract is filled and those officers are there the best we can. Our budget has allotted 2.5 detective positions, and the halves there are because one of our school resource officers, the one at Talmadge Middle School, is also trained to do child abuse, sex abuse investigations. And the idea with that position was that this officer in the school is going to be known and get to know kids, and they're going to feel more comfortable sharing information and talking to them, and we found that to be true. So that halftime position really was focusing on those sorts of investigative needs that really come out of our schools. So, and the rest of our 2.5 detectives, just really as a unit, focus on person crimes, sex and child abuse crimes, complex property crimes or large value property crimes, and then out of town investigations. And then we have 1 code enforcement officer, and that's all we have in that department left. Continuing on, our administrative staff is myself and 3 sergeants. Those 3 sergeants are broken into 2 patrol sergeants and a detective sergeant. And I listed off some of their duties because I think it's important to hear the things that they're doing other than being patrol sergeants. So one of them, and they rotate day and night. So they'll work a day shift for 4 months and then switch to night for 4 months, and they just go back and forth, those 2 patrol sergeants. So half of the time they're on night shift and half of the time they're on day shift. One of them has the duties, and these are just some of their duties that are very time consuming, and that's why I included them, but scheduling and keeping up our schedule, training and all of the maintenance training that's required to keep us certified. There are a lot more things that police officers have to do and prove they've done to maintain their annual and 3-year certifications. The legislature really got involved and created a lot of new things that everyone has to have. We generally had all those things, but now somebody has to track it and make sure we have it and get that information in so that our certifications stay valid. Time cards and managing our time cards. That 1 sergeant manages that Polk CERT program, is our PIO, our range master, and our quartermaster in charge of all of our equipment. The other patrol sergeant has duties that include accreditation, which every 3 years we have to reprove that we're doing all of the things necessary to be accredited. Does all of our policy updates, manages city licensing. You can figure out which ones they are now because Sergeant Cole just came in to see you for some city licensing for the first time recently. He also is our liaison with the records management system, which we are a contract agency with the city of Salem. A lot of us come together to share a records management system and a CAD system, the next one on there. And so he attends meetings to keep those programs improving in the right direction, and our systems here at the department functioning the way that they should with that larger regional system. He is also our Axon, which is, Axon is the body cameras and the tasers, and all of the electronic evidence that we have is all stored in one platform called Axon. So it's not a small task. And then he oversees our FTO program. And then our detective sergeant, the 3rd of our sergeants, has oversight over all of investigations, assigns out investigations, manages those as far as what, the right avenue to take, approach to take, whether search warrants should be written. And then this is Sergeant Banuelos. So currently, if there are needs for a Spanish-speaking detective, he handles those cases as well. So he's carrying a caseload as well as managing all investigations. And then he also oversees our SRO program, which is kind of a specialty. He is the only sergeant that has been in SRO and has been through all the SRO training. And he also has oversight on code enforcement. So
SRO is an acronym for what?
SRO, School Resource Officer, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry,
Okay.
I tried not to do too many acronyms today. So as a side note, before I move on from this slide, I am just going to throw out there that you can see all the duties that these three sergeants are trying to keep up on. And we are also expecting them to manage the patrol staff and manage incidents in the field. And as you're going to see in a minute, we have a whole lot of new officers. They really don't have the capacity to be out in the field as much as they should because they're having to keep up on these other requirements. So we're at a point in our development as an agency that we're going to need to consider another position like a lieutenant in the future. So when that comes up, you'll understand why and have some background as to why it may be important.
Chief, why do you manage the CERT program for the county?
Well, I say it's for the county. The program itself is Monmouth Independence and the Polk County Fire District. And no one else would, and so that's why we do. Yeah. Next slide, please. And then we have two support staff that are full-time. One is a records employee who answers all incoming phone calls, enters calls for service. We have the ability through the 911 center to actually enter calls into their system that then the dispatchers at the 911 center dispatch our officers on through both MDTs and over the radio. But that cuts down on a lot of, it provides a service that would otherwise be difficult to provide. Because if you call a non-emergency number over at the dispatch center, there's often long wait times there because of the volume of calls coming in. But there aren't long wait calls when you call our office. And so she can answer those calls and get those plugged in and get them out into the field very efficiently. She also does fingerprinting. I think we probably have the longest fingerprinting hours available in Polk County. As long as she's here, she's available to do fingerprints, and she really takes pride in that and does more than her share of the fingerprinting that is needed to be done in Polk County. A lot of people still need those for employment purposes, and it isn't easy to find a place. And I visit all the other offices around here to go to meetings and such, and normally there's a sign up that says, on Mondays from 10 to 2, you can come in and get your fingerprints taken. We're all day, every day, as long as the records is open. So she also manages all the records, getting them disseminated to where they need to go, and is just a real asset. So, and the last thing that Jen does that I think is a real time-consuming task is managing and reporting on our traffic grants. We gave those up for a year, maybe two, but we picked them back up this year because I've really heard the need to have more enforcement out there. That for every grant you get, you have to do reporting monthly and a whole bunch of other things. And she takes that on for us, taking it off my shoulders. And then our last support position is our office manager, Diane, who's been here longer than me. She is the longest tenured employee at the police department. And aside from managing the office and overseeing all that goes on there, she's our LEDS representative, which is a pretty big task that you have to keep everything done properly, or we could lose that certification and not be able to have access, which would make our job difficult. She's also our primary evidence person. She manages the evidence room completely and gets all evidence shipped out to where it needs to be for processing and purges it and has monthly audits done on the room to make sure that everything's being done right. Next slide. So the reality, this is how I labeled this one. So we haven't had enough employees to staff the things the way that they are budgeted. Our 4 administrative positions are still there, right? Myself and 3 sergeants have been employed throughout. We have had to promote a new sergeant recently because you're aware Sergeant Hedlund left us. But we've kept those 4 positions filled. We've been operating with about 4.5 patrol officers. Currently, I'd say that's what we have, not 7 that we require. So that gap, that 24-hour, 365 coverage is being picked up by moving detectives to patrol instead of doing their detective work, by sergeants covering patrol, and even myself. So we have kept our 1.5 school resource officers dedicated to the schools because of the contract that we have there. We don't want to lose that income, and we really feel that that's an important program to have those officers there. And we've used our traffic officer, like I said, quite a bit for patrol, but we are getting him back out doing traffic enforcement now. This actually is a little bit of an improvement. I would say most of 2022, we were down 5 instead of the 4 in training. We were really down 5 positions. We have hired and are back up now to where it's a little bit better. So that required coverage, that 365, 24/7, right? We have to manage, in spite of things like required trainings, we still have to send people to trainings. So those shifts don't get covered when those people aren't there to work them. Someone else has to come in and cover it, right? Illness, you're all aware there's been a lot of illness going around. So when your graveyard officer calls in sick, somebody has to work that graveyard shift, and we have to figure that out. Injuries, unfortunately, in our jobs, we end up wrestling with people on occasion, and people get injured and they can't cover their shift. And the last hurdle that's new to us that we're just learning to navigate is paid leave Oregon. I think we have the, I'm not going to say we're proud. We had the first paid leave Oregon recipient in the city at the police department. So all of a sudden we had another shift to cover there because someone took advantage of that new leave for childbirth, which is great. But again, if that person has a shift that they're supposed to be covering, well, we got to find some way to cover it. So we've had a lot of challenges aside from being short employees with all these other things as well. So our motto has been, everyone works patrol. If you have a uniform, you wear your uniform a lot because you don't know when you're going to be out there covering the primary patrol person, or the primary patrol person has to leave and go to the jail or do something else, and now you're the only person left. So if you have a uniform, we've been expecting everyone to wear them. One exception to that has been we've left one detective in the detective investigations unit to really focus on those investigations and keep them moving forward. But short of that, everyone else has been working patrol. Our priority was to cover the shifts, the patrol shifts, to recruit, because we needed to backfill all of our vacancies, and to train all of the new people that we hired. You forget that just getting the body in the door is great, and it's great to see the bodies, but now you've got to have FTOs that can work one-on-one with those people 16 weeks apiece, and then we have to send them off to the academy 16 weeks. So the outcomes of all of that, I would say, have been less traffic enforcement, and I've heard that complaint that we aren't out there as visible. Less random patrols, we just aren't out driving around. We're going where we need to go because someone is called in, and we have a reason to be there, right? We just aren't wandering around like we have been able to in the past. We made a decision to stop doing evaluations. They take time, and the people that needed to be doing them have recruits. So really, recruits get evaluated every single shift, and so, which takes time. It's called a daily observation report. So new employees are getting evaluated plenty. I'm sure that they would tell you they have no need for any more evaluations, but we stopped doing like the annual evaluations until we can get our staffing back up to where time allows. And another outcome of that has been less community engagement. We have not been as out and present at community events as we want to be and doing community policing activities. We've still hit the ones that we can hit, but definitely we have suffered a little bit there in our visibility, I think, at such events. So a little perspective on hiring. I did a little research to figure out how many we've hired and where why we've hired them. So since you appointed me a little over 9 years ago to this position, I've hired 17 full-time officers. And it sounds like a bunch. And you think, well, you guys must have a problem. I mean, it's the first thing I thought, 17 people, why are we losing so many people? So I did some research and I'm going to report that out now. Of the 17, 3 were new positions. So since I became the chief, the council has authorized 3 new positions for police officers. 4 were retirees, which, I mean, probably the first retirees that this agency has seen since Janet Davidson. She was the last person that I'm aware of, and most of you wouldn't even know her name. That's how long ago she retired. 4 left while on improvement plans, or they were terminated. Unfortunately, you do your best to hire the best people, but not everyone makes it here at our police department. So we have lost 4 for reasons like that. Only one has left for another job as a police officer, and that one went to the Oregon State Police, and his roots were from Hood River, where my roots were from, and he wanted to get back there, and he took a state police job. It's the only one that's left to go be a police officer somewhere else. 3 have left for industry-related jobs, like they're working at the police academy or for the Department of Justice. Our newest was the lottery, stole a person. So, and then 2 of our most recent departures just left law enforcement altogether. They're just leaving the business and doing something else. And I have a 3rd that has put me on notice that he's looking for work doing something else, just not going to be a police officer anymore. So of those 17, 6 of them have been hired in the last year and 7 months. So as things work, you know, there's only 7 that are on the patrol, and you have to have experience to get any of those other positions like detective or SRO. We only take people that have been on the road long enough to learn the job to go on and do some specialty. So we're gonna have 6 new people on patrol as soon as they all are able to be on patrol. Of those 6, 2 have become solo as of just very recently. The second one was solo. 1 is probably about a month from solo. 1 graduated the academy Friday. I was at her graduation. 1 started the academy yesterday, and the last one has a long ways to go. We just hired him, so it will be a while before we see that person on the road on their own, but I do believe it will happen before I retire.
But you're not retiring anytime soon, right?
I plan to retire at the end of 2024. That is my intent, yes. Recruitment is still in progress. So today we had interviews. A new batch of applicants were interviewed today, and I was told from the people that did those interviews that we had some really quality candidates. So that's good news because we still have some people that need to be hired. The official announcement right here. So our grant writer, Marshall Guthrie, submitted a grant through the COPS program, and we actually received that grant. So we should be able to get a new position in the police department, hopefully in next year's budget, using those grant funds. We're excited about that. The grant specifically talked about trying to do more community policing type things. So I think it really plays into a lot of different needs that we have going on. And ideally, you know, we will keep recruiting and hiring to fill vacancies that we know are coming before those vacancies actually occur. Myself, for example, if I plan on walking out the door, I hope that the new chief is selected and they're hiring someone to replace that chief, you know, well before I'm gone. So, but technically, as of today, we are fully staffed. Actually, we are fully staffed with 1 extra person because Officer Barlow hasn't walked out the door yet, but he's walking out very, very soon. And his replacement has been hired, but he's the one that I said it's going to be a while. So any questions on that? That's kind of the overview of the personnel of the police department, the struggles that you were aware we were having, but I don't talk about a lot. We've just been keeping our head down and pushing forward.
Counselor?
So you mentioned the COPS grant, and we were funding a position with that. Is that a single-year grant, multi-year grant? What's the plan if it's only a single-year grant?
It's a 3-year grant, and then you're required to keep it for, I believe, 1 more year. Yeah, I think it was 1, you have to keep it 1 more year, but it isn't a 100% funding, it's partial funding. So we're going to have to be having that conversation at budget time before we can move forward with that.
Thank you.
Counselor?
I have a couple questions. One, how many hours a week do police officers work, and are you working a lot of overtime?
They're on a 40-hour work week schedule, and yes, there's a fair amount of overtime going on.
Okay, and you said some candidates are being interviewed, but not by you. Who does the interviewing?
So the first round of interviews is normally done by a sergeant, HR, and then a couple of other people. It varies. Some of you have probably been asked to sit on those interviews at some point along the way. And then they narrow that pool, and I interview them after they've narrowed the pool.
Okay, and last question is, do you think it's our reduced staff that we slipped a pedophile being at the library? Or is that just something we didn't hit?
I don't want to go too deep into that, but I will just say the sex offender registration program is run by the state police, and that information that is in that program is provided by the registrant, the person registering. They could come into our police department and register, but they provide the information. It gets entered in a database, and that's all it is.
But if it's a lie, then.
Oh, I don't believe it's a lie.
Then
I believe the person.
Do you think the person's actually living at the library?
I guess it would depend on what your definition of living at means, but I think that the person sleeps at the library regularly, yes.
So we allow a pedophile to sleep at the
Not
library?
in the library, but you've been through all of this training on homelessness. So, yeah, people can sleep where people find shelter, and there's no restriction. And currently, that would be the case at our library. So,
And that's a state, and those are under statewide rules.
yeah, all of that registry
Statewide.
program is state and federal, but that
Right.
program itself is completely run through the Oregon State Police.
This is the zero barrier, no barrier type of thing. Because I was just wondering, because like as a sex offender, there aren't separate rules. They can sleep
Correct.
anywhere.
Correct.
Okay. So they
Yeah.
could sleep at a school.
Being in the registry doesn't, so when I run someone and find their name in a registry, it has no restrictions with it, right? The only time that there are restrictions that we would investigate or look into is if someone is on parole or probation. There is often restrictions that go along with that. But that is not what we're talking about with this registry. This registry is not that. There are not rules or enforceable conditions that go along with the registry. It is merely a database that exists.
Counselor Morton.
One small follow-up question on that and one comment. Just giving an address of the library does not imply that person is receiving mail at the library, does it?
I don't believe it does, no.
Okay. I wanted to just commend the police department. Last week, I was sitting at the bank, at Umpqua Bank, and I watched 4 young men, this was a little bit before 5 o'clock, walking towards Gilgamesh. They did not look like they were in full control of all of their faculties. The one, this was a Friday night, the one at the end of the line very clearly was packing a pistol because it was in his back pocket and 50% exposed. I felt confident enough in our police department to pick up the phone and call the 1214 number and talk to your longest term employee and say, here's the situation. And she said, I will pass this through the staff right now and find out if there's any need to go over there and just do a little eyes on. And I felt like it was being taken care of, and I appreciate that ability to make that immediate kind of contact.
Thank you, Counselor. Continue, Chief.
Okay, statistics. So I have statistics that are going to pop up on the slide for you. They are a 5-year look back. However, for 2023, they just go through the end of October, so they're missing 2 months. So when you look at them, don't think that 2023 is done, because obviously it's not. We haven't finished the year yet, right? So the first is arrests, and I would say if you figured in the missing 2 months, we're on track to be slightly over last year with our arrests. And they are broken down, next slide please, in juvenile and adults. Our juvenile arrests are up and continue to rise. And I don't have a great answer for that other than to say, we have noticed that juveniles' behavior has been more problematic. And I hate to use COVID as an excuse, but I will use it as a timeline. So coming out of COVID, I will say that we have noticed that juveniles' behaviors have been more problematic in our community. So whether or not that has any bearing on why it's happening. I can just say that we've noticed it.
Can you say why, like what type of arrests? Like,
Oh,
are we talking
it's-
about drugs, fighting?
All of it, all of it. We've had some small groups of kids that have caused a lot of problems in the community and, really made some neighborhoods feel unsafe. And we've struggled to police that. Most of them have now left our community because of, I think, some aggressive policing, where we just spent a lot of time in that neighborhood because we were getting so many calls. But yeah, one small group of individuals can really make a whole neighborhood feel differently. And we really struggle to address it sometimes because, we need to operate within the parameters that we're allowed to operate. But that was just kind of an example of what I have seen. I will say those numbers are trending up though, right? So with 2 months left to go, it's definitely going to trend up and be much higher than last year and clear back to pre-COVID numbers, which the adults are not doing. So part of that, you'll hear more as we go through, but part of that could also be the ballot measure 110 changes, so we're arresting less adults. So that could be part of it. Let's see. Okay, next slide is CAD events. Not a lot of information there. Our records department prepared
What does
these-
CAD stand for,
Oh,
please?
yeah, thank you. Prepared these slides for me, and I just felt like I shouldn't take any of them out, so I left them all in that they prepared. CADs are a computer-aided dispatch. And what it is has changed over the years a little bit as we have changed the back end, the actual records management system and the CAD system. We do things differently as an industry, and so we have less of these. But I think it's also because we've been without some of our staff, and the less people you have out working, making traffic stops, making contacts, the less crime they're going to find, the less CADs and case numbers are going to take, right? So one traffic stop could equal a whole bunch of crimes, and not making that one or 200 traffic stops that would have been made with staffing affects all these numbers, yes.
I emailed staff a couple weeks ago about the City of Independence maybe taking on a measure like the City of Dallas did with no open air drug use. And I was told that we already have a zone in downtown for no drug use. So why would Measure 110 limit the amount of adults that are being, why don't we enforce that more? Because every time I walk down there, there's always people doing drugs and alcohol in the park. Is it because of staffing or Measure 110 that we're not getting the drugs out of the park?
So I walk downtown a lot also, and I can't say that every time I go downtown, I see people drinking and using drugs, but
I can take pictures in the future if that
well, I've
helps.
seen some of your pictures already, it's okay. But the reason I say the drugs is because the whole community was an area that we enforced drugs, illegal drugs, and we had a team that enforced illegal drugs. And so that generated arrests and computer-aided dispatch reports. Now, the downtown area, and I would have to do some research on this, but our downtown drug-free exclusion zone is very small. It's just the downtown. It's Main Street and one block towards Second. It may even only be half of that block. Again, we don't use it much, but it was really designed to stop drug dealing. And that's my recollection of that zone, is that it was for people dealing drugs in the downtown. And that's when you could exclude them from the zone.
Okay. So the park isn't even covered in that zone? Just the
No, I
Main
think the
Street.
park is covered. I think much of Riverview Park is covered. Yeah. Sorry, it's been a while since we used it. When we created that zone, we were having a lot of troubles with downtown distribution of controlled substances. People were selling drugs on our street corners. That's why council created that zone. And we utilized it effectively for a while until things cleaned up. And I mean, I can tell you, it's a different downtown than when we created the zone. So case numbers also kind of a little down from last year, which is, again, probably a result of just less people out doing the things that find the crime. It also could be the new CAD system. There is there are things that we used to take case numbers for that now we just document in the CAD system because we're able to go find them a lot better than we used to be able to. We used to have to take a case number because cases got printed and paper copies filed, right, in the police department, and we could always go back and find that. But now most everything is electronic, and we're able to go find that data. Citations, definitely down from 2019, way down, but they're starting to creep back up. And I think that as these newest hired officers go solo, you'll see that continue to go up. Traffic enforcement is something you really have to have free time to go do. You can't be, needing to type reports or do investigations or handle calls. So it is one of the things that I think suffers first when you are short-staffed. And then the actual crime stats here are the next slide. So this is part 1, part 2, and part 3 crimes. This is a summary page that shows all 3 of those crime types. And those are designed and created by the FBI through the Uniform Crime Reporting Statistics, and that's most police agencies report to this. So you're able to compare crime trends nationwide. From this slide, I would just say crime really isn't up. Some specific categories may be up, but generally crime is not up. And we're going to break them down. So part 1 crimes, the next slide, is part 1 means crimes like homicide, assault, human trafficking, kidnap, rape, and sex offenses. Those are what crime fit in part 1. Does that make sense? And so you can see that our assaults are high still. They're not as high as last year, but they're high. And I don't have a good answer for that. My one thought was that it had to have something to do with juveniles, but I asked records to do some research and they were like, nope, come up with another idea. So, I mean, it just is up. There are more assaults than we have had in the past. So, still not as many as last year, but I mean, again, we don't look at these a lot and we haven't had time to really pay attention and analyze them. So this has been a good exercise for me because they are definitely higher than they were in 19, 20, and 21.
That's just assaults.
Just assaults, yeah. Well,
But part 1 says homicide, assault, human trafficking, kidnap, rape.
yeah, but they are split out there on that slide. See, the assaults are the really big graph.
Oh, the next
We
one.
didn't have that one.
Sorry, we didn't have that one.
Sorry, Karen. Yeah.
But I mean, our population's increased too, so.
Yeah, that's true.
Is it higher amongst any particular group?
Not that they were able to identify for me, no. Well, not that they were able to identify, I should say. What'd you say? Okay. Sorry. Next slide, part 2 crimes. Part 2 are things like arson, bad checks, bribery, burglary, counterfeiting or forgery, embezzlement, extortion, fraud, theft, robbery, and vandalism. My observations from here are that vandalism and theft are down. Vandalism often is graffiti, and we had a lot of graffiti last year, and we deployed our surveillance trailer and some other cameras and made them really obvious that they were there, and that really did have a big impact on cutting down on some of the graffiti. Again, that is one of those things that one person or a small group of people will have a huge impact on your community because they run around and do it everywhere until they're caught or move. So
What's
that's my
the
observation
difference?
on part 2.
What's the difference between burglary, robbery, and theft?
Good question. A burglary is stealing from a building. A robbery is using or threatening to use force to take something. And a theft is the mere taking of something, like a shoplift or
Okay.
taking something off the
Thank
street
you.
or such thing. And then part 3 crimes. The longest list here is the part 3 crimes. So I'm going to read them all for you for those that don't have the slides or can't read because it's a difficult read in this room. Animal cruelty, curfew, loitering, vagrancy, disorderly conduct, DUI, drugs, family offenses that are nonviolent, gambling, intimidation, liquor law violations, peeping Tom, prostitution, stalking, trespass, weapons laws. Observations here are that disorderly conduct and trespassing continue to lead our Part 3 crimes. And we continue to see less drug charges than in previous years. And as we talked about a moment ago, that I think has a lot to do with ballot measure 110, why we're seeing less drug charges. It's the end of my crime stats, but I do have a couple more things to talk about. So I would be remiss if I didn't mention gun violence and its increase in 2023, because we have had an increase of gun violence in 2023. So in starting off the year in January, we had a New Year's Eve fist fight that turned into a shooting at a New Year's Eve party. In January, we had an armed robbery at Seven Star where shots were fired, our local store there. At the same time, we had an armed robbery at Mi Casita. There was a bank robbery at Umpqua Bank. There was a gun involved in a dispute at Central High School graduation. There was a young girl struck by a falling bullet during the Independence Day celebration. And then the last two on the next slide are that in September, we had an elude that ended in Riverview Park with a deputy being shot at during the foot chase that followed that elude. And also in September, we had an elude and shooting that originated in Independence and ended on Highway 22 with a deputy being shot at and returning fire.
Are both those deputies okay?
Yes. This gun violence is very concerning, and the cases that aren't already solved that I just went through are still under active investigation. Next slide. Work continues to be done. So throughout the recruiting and hiring that we have been doing, which does take a lot of time and energy, we have still been focusing on getting police work done. We've been playing from behind all year, right? Like I said, in 2022, we were down more staff than we are now. We've really been working to get all of those staff rehired. Aside from handling the daily calls for service that come in, just this past week, we had a sex abuse suspect that was taken into custody in Chehalis, Washington, that we've been seeking from a 2022 case. We arrested another sex abuse suspect locally, and we made, I would say, significant progress in some of our other serious felony investigations. We have not stopped pushing forward on those. So in closing, I just want to reiterate, you've lost good officers to other careers, not to be officers somewhere else, right? I just want to make sure that's clear. You still have good officers that take pride in serving this community. Generally, the crime rate is steady after trending down during COVID. Case clearances and prosecution are still high, even with our short staffing. Workable cases are still being worked to hold offenders accountable. And your police department still embraces these core values of excellence, integrity, courage, and compassion.
Chief, thank you very much for your presentation, and I will just offer from my perspective, leadership makes a difference. And you know that in your own department, and I think we recognize that in your leadership and appreciate your passion, energy, and direction. So to you and the department, thank you for all that you do. Great. Okay, Mr. Irvine, I think it's to you. I think you have a brief report tonight.
Yes, I figure I'll come up here so I can see everybody. We'll change of pace. So yeah, Mayor, Council, appreciate the opportunity to talk with you tonight. Just want to give a quick update on the sidewalk repair program that we relaunched after a pretty long pause. So it's been kind of a long run up, getting the partners together and getting things going. I think it's to be expected because even though this is a program we've done in years past, it's been a while and it's all new people at the different organizations and with the partners. So there was a lot of kind of figuring out who's going to do what, schedules, process, kind of decision tree of things. But it's starting to catch its stride. So I'm pretty pleased with the way it's going now. We started off with, had them pouring a couple of bench pads for benches that were going in along the river trail. That was a great way for them to get experience, because of course, these are kids with no experience looking to get job skills. That led to one of our first tweaks, which we were fortunate to have George Scarda, who's a very experienced local contractor. He actually volunteered to come in and help out with the crew to kind of provide his expertise and make sure that the finished product was up to snuff. And also just, he really helped the crew a lot with understanding kind of process, kind of how to set things up right, how to finish things correctly. Once he got involved, I think things really kind of started coming together better. They'll be pouring their second residential sidewalk this week, which is great, getting some of those sidewalks done. And I had actually expected that we'd be shutting down for the winter because, of course, weather is getting worse for concrete. But they actually want to be able to continue as best they can throughout the winter. So they're going to continue to work kind of on a case, kind of spot by spot basis, depending on how the weather goes. Definitely not going to be tearing up a bunch of sidewalk and leaving it for weeks on end. So they're going to be kind of judicious about watching the weather, and when they've got a chunk of time that's going to make sense, they'll go ahead and do something. But that'll be nice to have that be able to continue on. And I kind of want to own a little bit of the slow start here because at the beginning when we were talking about doing things, our goal is that they be working on multiple sites at once and that things kind of really keep rolling. But I actually asked them to please, for now, just do one project, start to finish, get it done, move on to the next project, start to finish, get it done. Because I wanted them to really kind of get their ducks in a row, all of us get our ducks in a row before we try to do too much too fast. And so I think that was a good decision because I could kind of have envisioned a couple of points where we may have had a bunch of sidewalks torn up with not much happening. But now I think we've got our process figured out, and I'm pretty excited about how late spring and this coming summer will be in terms of being able to get projects on the board and knocked out pretty quickly. This, you'll recall, is funded through workforce development funding through our partners, and then also we've contributed some ARPA funding as well to make this go. We'll be continuing to work on funding sources over the winter, but I'm pretty optimistic about the workforce development money being able to continue to fund this type of program. It's definitely seen as a successful program. We've actually had some other communities reaching out to us about trying to replicate it in their communities. And so by way of wrap up, it's kind of a two-sided benefit here. We're getting sidewalks repaired, bench pads poured, but then we've also are providing, work and life skills for some kids in town here. So they've had 8 kids who have spent a good bit of time on this project so far. 7 of them are either still in high school or dual enrolled, so they're still working their way through the K-12 system, and getting good work experience along the way. The one who was out of school during the time of the sidewalk program got his GED and has also found construction-related work where he's making over $20 an hour full-time. So that's exactly the kind of thing that we wanted to see happen from this. That's my very quick summary. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. Irvine?
Sounds like a great program, yeah.
Sounds good.
Well done.
Keep going.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move forward. We have a public hearing. Mr. Evander, you get to come up, but I get to read a little bit. I'm now going to open a public hearing on revision of the comprehensive plan map and amendments to the independent zoning map, file number LA 2023-04. My name is Sean McCardle. I'm the mayor and the chairperson of this hearing. The hearing will be conducted in accordance with Independence Development Code and State Law ORS 197.297. Specifically, the staff will first present the staff report and recommendation. The applicant will then have an opportunity to present the proposal and address any issues raised by the staff report and recommendation. Public testimony, I'll ask to hear from people who would like to speak in favor. I'll then ask to hear from people who are neutral or have questions about the proposal, and neither for or against. And finally, those in opposition to the proposal will have an opportunity to present testimony, starting with appellants. City staff may then present additional material and relevant recommendations based on public testimony. The applicant will be given the opportunity to have the last word. After each presentation, I'll ask for questions from the council. If you intend to present oral testimony, please fill out a request to speak form located at the room and give it to city staff. We are recording this hearing, so please clearly state your name and address when called to speak. This will help prepare accurate minutes, written minutes of the hearing, and also assist in mailing copies of the decision to all interested parties. If you have written testimony or other evidence to submit, please give that to staff so it will be entered in the record. Each speaker shall limit themselves to no more than 5 minutes, and please remember that all presentations will be timed. You'll be informed when your allotted time is expired. All speakers exceeding the time limit will be asked to immediately conclude their remarks. If you do not finish your presentation, be sure to provide a copy of a statement to the staff. The applicant will not be limited to 3 minutes, but they are encouraged to limit their presentations as they are able to be respectful of our time constraints this evening. In order to minimize repetitive testimony, organizations are encouraged to have one person speak for the group, and other members of the organization stand to show their support. Each person may testify only once unless called back to the podium at the request of a council member to respond to a question. Thank you for your cooperation. The mayor and the council is required to disclose any conflicts of interest, ex parte contacts that we have with the proposer or the applicant. That is, whether we have any financial or other personal interest in the proposal, and whether we have spoken with anybody about the proposal outside of this hearing. Also, councilors may only participate if they can do so without undue bias, either for or against the applications. Do councilors wish to make any disclosures? I see no one indicating. Are there any challenges from the audience? Okay. State law requires me to tell you a number of things at the beginning of the hearing. First, the applicable substantial criteria that apply to this application are contained in the written staff report and will be identified and discussed in the oral staff report. Second, your testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed towards these criteria or other criteria in the comprehensive plan or development code that you believe apply to the application. That's ORS 197.2975B. Don't worry, it's almost done. Third, failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker or other people an opportunity to respond may preclude an appeal of a decision on this application based on the issue, and that's ORS 197.7975C. Finally, to the applicant, failure to raise constitutional or other issues related to proposed conditions of the approval with sufficient specificity to allow the city to respond to the issues preclude in action for damages in circuit court, and that's ORS 197.7973E. Staff, you now can make the staff report.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thanks for doing that. I realize it's a long script at the start of this, and I'll just say part of the reason why is we're treating this kind of as a quasi-judicial hearing for this zone change because it's a smaller geography. It's a relatively small zone change that we're looking at. But in many ways, it's a type 4 decision, which is a legislative decision because as we learned, as we did the housing needs analysis, there is a need for some additional multifamily land in the community. That was one of the findings of that, and we saw an opportunity here with this project to take some land that was zoned either light industrial or low-density single-family residential, and to take some of that land and put it into a higher density use, something like a multifamily residential. So this proposal would change the comprehensive plan future land use map, and it would also change the zoning map for a relatively small area at 3rd and G. It would be at the southeast corner of the intersection of 3rd and G. A lot of folks will know the site because it was recently cleared of trees. Over there recently is right by the rail line. It's bound by downtown commercial on the north and industrial on the north, bound to the east by multifamily zoning and development, and then bound to the west and south by single-family development. As I noted, the recently adopted housing needs analysis recommended identifying targeted areas to rezone for higher density housing. It talked about some of the things to look at in doing that: proximity to services, proximity to utilities, that sort of stuff. This site is directly adjacent to the downtown zone. Based on that, seeing the opportunity to potentially allow higher density housing there made a whole ton of sense to us. It was considered by the planning commission over the course of a couple of meetings. They held a public hearing on it, and they voted to recommend approval to you folks to make the change. The change would also include a change to the comprehensive plan map. The comprehensive plan map right now is kind of hard to read. When you look at it, and even when you zoom in on it, it is hard to read. I'll just point it out on page 17 of your packet. You can see that this is sort of what's in our comprehensive plan right now. And you can see that this is about as good a copy as we have. We don't have an original of this. And so as we're doing this change, we know that our future land use map and our comprehensive plan should be consistent with our zoning map, but also clear, readable, and modifiable ultimately. And so as part of that, we would recommend a change to the comprehensive plan map too. The criteria that are in the staff report include subchapter 10, subchapter 11, subchapter 12, but then also things like our comprehensive plan and that housing needs analysis. Basically, the Planning Commission thought this made sense. They recommended that you folks approve it. I'm standing before you now with the recommendation of approval. Are there any questions? Yes.
I have a question. Were we supposed to get a copy of the application?
There was no application. So, so as the mayor was talking about the applicant,
Yeah.
that's partially the type 3 language for handling it as a quasi-judicial site-specific rezone. But in many ways, this was a legislative rezone. This was something that I took to the Planning Commission and said, hey, I know that someone is acquiring land in the area, and I had actually okay, let me step back. Simplot owned a lot of that property. They recently did a lot line adjustment, and in the process, they had apparently agreed to a lot line adjustment like 15 years ago, and then they never recorded it. And so one of the property owners said, hey, I want this piece of land that you folks offered me 15 years ago. And so a lot line adjustment was recorded. All of a sudden, some of the lots got bigger, and then the Simplot lot got smaller. And so Simplot sold the property to a neighboring landowner, and he was going to develop it. In the process, one of the neighbors also got a slightly bigger piece of the lot and said, hey, I would love to rezone this to something higher density. And then the other guy ended up buying out the third property. And so all of a sudden, there was 2 property owners, both desiring the same zone change. And it's like, if there's 2 property owners that want this in this proximity to downtown, this is a unique opportunity for this zone change. And so based on that, I went to the Planning Commission and said, hey, this is not that much land. It's 1.58 acres, but it's in close proximity to downtown. If we keep it zoned light industrial, likely what we'll see there is something like a storage unit development. And it makes a whole lot more sense to me as housing. What do you think, Planning Commission? And the Planning Commission said, yes, it makes sense to us to especially in light of the housing needs analysis, to rezone that property to something higher density. And so based on that, we took it through as a legislative amendment, something that we were wanting to do, but with the small site-specific nature of the rezone, we treated it more as like a quasi-judicial rezone. It's very similar. We just wanted to cover our bases. Yeah, go for it.
Does this high-density project fall under the new conditions that you put in with the downtown area? So like if they do a certain number of things, they can have a building up to 55 feet tall. Is this one of these?
No, so this is a different zone as that, and you'll remember that I I can't exactly remember how when we do stuff, a lot of times I put it in the past and I'll revisit it when I need to. So if my recollection serves, the recently adopted change was just to cap it at 40 feet, period. Not to allow the 55 feet anymore. This is a different zone. This is the high-density residential zone. The one across the street is a mixed-use pedestrian-friendly commercial zone. So, different zone. So those standards wouldn't apply to this. I think, I don't remember what the height limit is in the high-density residential zone.
Could you ballpark it?
It's either 35 feet or 45 feet.
Thank you.
So probably a 3-story structure max.
I would imagine, yeah.
And confirming there's, since you guys did this at Plankish, there was nobody giving any, there's no objections or anything like that?
No, and we, as part of this, we handled it through our normal process. This is a Measure 50, we had to go through the Measure 56 process with this, so we mailed direct mailing to each of the affected property owners. And so we did hear from each of the property owners, and all of them said, yeah, we completely support this. We also mailed it out to people within 250 feet of the project. We did get a couple of calls about it, but no one submitted formal comments about the zone change, and no one came to the planning commission hearing or anything, so.
Additional questions for the presenter? Okay, so I'm following my script here because heaven help us if I follow them. So we have nobody else to speak. You folks are not jumping up and down. I know, Lisa, you're just knitting. Okay,
It's crocheting.
sorry.
One needle, not two.
One,
I should have said too, like, just, could you please show page 15, just so everybody in the, well, I mean, I guess there's, page 15, just so folks can see what we're talking about. And so the rezone area, so you can see, this right now is Alter Tree Service. It used to be where Car Safari was located. This would be directly across the street. This is G Street, this is 3rd Street. And this is the rail line that goes through that area.
Is it a construction company? Is that what's there right now?
Yes.
In the back?
In the back, yes.
okay. If there's no more questions, and I don't think there's anything else I have to do in the public hearing, is there, Fred? I can go ahead and close the hearing?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, without well,
Yeah, I
I got it.
absolutely.
All right, without objection, I'm going to close the hearing, and we're going to move to the next item, which is amends the zoning map. Give me the page number again. I was wondering where, I was flipping and reading at the same time here. There we go. Where is this? Thank you. Okay,
I move to approve the proposed comprehensive plan map and zoning map changes with recommendations and findings as listed in the staff report. Is that correct?
yes.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, motion carries. Thank you. I was trying to find it, Karen, and I was flipping past. That's okay, you're fine. Now we can go to 7.2, amending zoning map, comp plan, the ordinance. And that's on page 21.
I move to read the proposed ordinance council bill number 2023-06 in full as the text is contained in the council packet for the first time.
Second.
I have a motion second. Discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, motion carries. An ordinance amending the Independence Comprehensive Plan Map and Zoning Map. I was trying to help. You're okay. Let's go to the second one, please.
I move to read the proposed ordinance Council Bill 2023-06 for the second time by title only.
Second.
I have a motion second by Schwartzler. Discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, motion carries.
An ordinance amending the Independence Comprehensive Plan map and zoning map.
Third one, please. Anyone?
I move to adopt the proposed ordinance, Council Bill number 2023-06.
I have a motion,
Second.
second by Morton. Discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Council bill is passed and will be assigned ordinance number 1611.
Okay, announcements.
I just want to include in the record that Mr. Evander and Mr. Goche did a really good interview with KMUZ. It was on yesterday, and folks can tune in and listen to it.
Great. Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, you mentioned Veterans Day up at our Veterans Memorial Plaza. And I just want to say, if you haven't had the opportunity to stop by and see the new signage that's been put out between our museum and our American Legion, several other people, amazing veteran that built the frame, somebody else that did the printing. We really have a nice history of our memorial, which is, by the way, the first in the state of Oregon and the oldest west of the Mississippi. So stop by, have a look, pay your respects.
Okay, please.
Yes. First of all, I wanted to thank everyone who came and participated with and in the very first My Story Night last Friday night. It was very well attended. The stories were amazing. And the consensus of the audience was, let's do this again. So look for another edition of it coming probably in the first 4 months of 2024. And on December 2nd, the Santa train is coming, and it will be parked at the end of C Street on the railroad tracks, and C Street will be closed down. There will be all kinds of vendors and activities for vendors with things and activities for kids. The only criteria is that anything that a vendor offers must be free.
Great, thank you. I have an announcement just for your calendars. The December 26th meeting, we will not have one.
Thank you.
Yay.
I thought that would,
I was just complaining about that tonight.
I saw the kids.
you know, if anything pops up that I need to get you together, I'll let you know. But we're not going to have something on the 26th. Santa needs a break. Somebody say the magic word of adjournment. All in favor?
Aye.
We're done. Have a pleasant evening. Good night.